Um, when you picture the big markers of human history, you probably see, fire.
Right.
Or maybe the steam engine.
Right, or the Transcontinental Railroad, or even the Apollo moon landing.
Yeah, exactly. Historically, society's greatest pivot points have always been made of steel.
Oh, for sure.
They're these monumental, highly visible artifacts that just violently divide the before from the after. But the greatest civilizational shift since the Industrial Revolution isn't made of steel at all.
No, it's not.
It's made of invisible code. And it is literally sitting in your pocket right now.
Which is pretty wild to think about.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into this fascinating manuscript from 2026 by Professor Dr. Milton Biswas. It's called America at 250, the ChatGPT Civilization.
And the mission of this deep dive is really to explore how generative AI isn't just, a new software tool.
Right.
We are crossing a threshold where technology stops being a mere tool we use to shape our environment, and it actually becomes an active participant in shaping us.
Oh.
Yeah. Biswas frames this as a historical culmination. The argument here is that generative AI is fundamentally rewiring human language, the global balance of power, and, the very architecture of our own identities.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Biswas points out that technology has always been America's national identity badge, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Historically, the whole democratic experiment has been this tightrope walk between boundless, frontier-level technological optimism and the messy fallout of social disruption.
It's a delicate balance, yeah.
But to truly understand the algorithmic brain that you interact with every day, we actually have to rewind.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the genesis of this, and I'm struggling to see the leap.
The leap from what to what?
From mid-20th century geopolitical paranoia to, poetry writing chatbots. How did Cold War anxiety create Silicon Valley?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really began with an existential shock.
You mean Sputnik?
Exactly. When the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957, the United States realized that technological superiority was no longer just about prosperity.
Right, it was about not getting wiped off the map.
Yes. It was entirely synonymous with national survival, and that panic resulted in the National Defense Education Act of 1958.
Which opened up just an unprecedented floodgate of federal funds.
It did. But the key to the modern digital empire isn't just the money. It's, where the money went and how it was managed.
Because it didn't just go to traditional military bases. It
Right.
flooded into universities, right? It kind of bypassed those traditional bureaucratic channels.
Yeah, and Stanford University really seems to be the epicenter of this pivot.
Okay, how so?
Well, you have Frederick Terman, who was the provost at Stanford, and he essentially engineered the DNA of Silicon Valley.
Oh, interesting.
He deliberately collapsed the walls between theoretical academic research, massive defense funding from agencies like DARPA, and garage-style hyper-capitalist entrepreneurship.
So you just mashed them all together.
Exactly. By treating these three distinct worlds as one single ecosystem, he incubated a culture of extreme risk-taking.
Right, where failure isn't a career-ending disaster. It's iterative data.
Precisely.
So Silicon Valley wasn't just a happy accident of a few brilliant dropouts tinkering in garages. It was a strategically funded garden, heavily fertilized by Cold War paranoia.
That's a great way to put it.
And out of that very specific soil grew the three distinct layers required for an AI civilization to even exist.
Right, because you need the whole stack.
Yeah. You have Apple, which cracked the hardware and the user-centric design, taking massive computing power and making it accessible to a layperson.
Which is crucial.
Then you have Microsoft,
Yeah.
standardizing the software architecture so everything could actually communicate.
Yeah.
And finally, Google, which stepped in to index and organize the unimaginable chaos of human data.
Because without accessible hardware, a unified software platform, and a comprehensive mapping of human knowledge, generative AI is mathematically impossible.
It just couldn't happen.
No. And for decades, those platforms were primarily about retrieval. You ask a question, you get an existing document.
Like a superpowered library.
Right. But generative AI crosses the Rubicon by moving from retrieval to active synthesis. It mimics our most defining species-level trait, which is language.
And this is where we really need to look under the hood. Because when you type a prompt into your phone and it writes, I don't know, a flawless corporate memo or a heartbreaking sonnet in 5 seconds, it feels like magic.
It really does.
But it's not thinking. It's entirely math. How do these transformer models actually pull this off without understanding a single word they are saying?
Okay, so think of it less like a brain and more like an unimaginably complex multidimensional map.
Okay.
When these models ingest terabytes of human text, they aren't reading for comprehension. They are mapping words and concepts geometrically based on how often they appear together.
So it's about proximity.
Exactly. On this map, the concept of a dog is physically positioned closer to a leash or a bone than it is to, say, a spaceship.
So they are essentially calculating the spatial relationship between ideas.
Precisely. The AI doesn't know what sadness feels like or what a dog looks like. It simply draws a geometric path through that probability space to predict the next most likely fragment of a word. It is a statistical inference engine playing the world's most sophisticated game of autocomplete.
Which perfectly explains the phenomenon of hallucinations, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if the system is just predicting what word statistically looks best next to the previous word, it makes total sense that it prioritizes fluency over truth.
It just wants to sound right.
Yeah. It will confidently fabricate legal precedents that don't exist or invent historical battles simply because the geometry of the sentence demanded it. It sounds authoritative, but there's no factual floor underneath it.
Right, because the architecture is designed to be plausible, not necessarily factual.
Which is kind of terrifying.
It is. Yet that exact same probabilistic mechanism, that freedom from strict factual constraints, is what allows it to be so staggeringly creative.
Oh, that's a really good point.
We are looking at machines that can generate poetry, perfectly mimicking the fragmented, disillusioned modernism of T.S. Eliot.
Or the raw, confessional vulnerability of Sylvia Plath.
Exactly. And in visual arts, we see AI cinema blending, like Renaissance chiaroscuro lighting with cyberpunk neon to produce these surreal aesthetics no human artist ever conceptualized.
But Biswas draws a very hard line here regarding the nature of that creativity. He defines it as an ontological asymmetry.
Yes, and that distinction is vital.
How so?
When a human writes a poem about grief, that art is anchored in lived experience. It carries the weight of mortality, of historical context, of an intention to communicate actual pain.
Right, there's a person behind it.
Exactly. But algorithmic creativity is ahistorical. It's recursion. It is a brilliant, hyper-complex mirror reflecting our own cultural data back at us, but the reflection has no soul.
Because there is no conscious agent behind the glass.
Precisely.
Okay, but hold on. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's step out of the theoretical for a second.
Okay, sure.
If I am reading a poem generated by an AI, and the imagery is so profound that it brings me to tears, does it really matter that the origin is just a statistical probability engine?
Well, that's the big debate.
Because the emotional impact on me, the human reader, is entirely real. Or is it just a glorified, math-powered parrot manipulating our emotions? Like, aren't we just moving the goalposts of art if we demand human suffering as a prerequisite for beauty?
That tension is exactly the point. The output is becoming indistinguishable from human genius. But if a statistical engine can perfectly mimic human emotion and persuasion, the vulnerabilities extend far beyond art.
You mean into society itself?
Yes. It immediately threatens the foundational pillars of how a society forms consensus. If the machine is the ultimate persuader, prioritizing fluency over truth, the most immediate battleground is actually the classroom.
Oh, man. Let's look at education, because the industrial age classroom model we all grew up with is fundamentally a one-size-fits-all assembly line.
It really is.
It relies on a rigid curriculum, standardized testing, and inevitably leaves kids behind. But generative AI introduces the prospect of the ultimate Socratic mentor.
An endlessly patient tutor.
Right. A tutor that adapts in real time to a student's individual pacing, identifies their specific cognitive blind spots, and just never gets frustrated.
And the democratizing potential of a personalized tutor for every child on Earth is staggering.
It sounds like a utopia.
It does, but the trade-offs are severe. Because to function at that level, the AI requires incredibly granular behavioral data.
Like what?
It needs to track how long a student hesitates, where their eyes move, what specifically frustrates them. That opens up a massive frontier of privacy violations.
Oh, I didn't even think about the eye tracking.
Yeah. And furthermore, learning is inherently a communal, social activity. If we replace the human teacher with an algorithm, we lose the moral and social guidance that shapes a child into a citizen.
So we are risking a scenario where children are brilliantly educated in isolation without the friction of human socialization.
Exactly.
And that isolation mirrors what is already happening to adults in the realm of journalism and shared reality.
Oh, absolutely. We are watching the complete transformation of how we agree on what is true.
Because we have automated news generation providing real-time financial and sports updates, functioning right alongside a terrifying proliferation of deepfakes.
Audio and video that are completely synthetic but visually flawless.
And this strikes at the core of the democratic experiment we discussed earlier. Because the architecture of these platforms is driven by a singular metric, which is user engagement.
And what drives engagement better than anything else is outrage.
The algorithm maps our psychological triggers.
It does, and we need to be extremely clear here because this is something Biswas emphasizes. The underlying algorithm is entirely agnostic regarding political ideology.
Right. We're explicitly not taking sides here, and neither does the algorithm. Whether a user leans far left or far right, the mechanism treats them identically.
Exactly. It maps their pre-existing biases and feeds them whatever sensationalist content or localized outrage keeps them scrolling.
By micro-targeting individuals, the algorithm just shatters the public square.
It replaces a shared factual reality with millions of parallel, custom-tailored echo chambers.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If your AI tutor perfectly adapts to how you want to learn, and your newsfeed perfectly adapts to what you already believe, are you becoming more enlightened or just more isolated in a custom-built reality?
That is the defining question of our time.
Which leads us to the broader economic engine powering this entire system. Because this hyper-personalized reality isn't a free public service.
No.
You are paying for it, just not with a credit card. The currency of this new era is data.
What's fascinating here is that we've entered an era of data capitalism. It expands on concepts like Shoshana Zuboff's surveillance capitalism.
Right, where human experience is the product.
Exactly. In an industrial economy, corporations extracted natural resources like coal, oil, timber to build wealth. In the ChatGPT civilization, the raw commodity being extracted is human experience and behavioral patterns.
It's like we're all walking around dropping gold coins our data every time we click, scroll, or pause on a video.
Yes, and these tech giants and nation-states are frantically scooping them up to build empires of influence.
Because they aren't just collecting this to sell you shoes anymore. They are building a voodoo doll of your psychology to map your emotional triggers so they can reliably predict what will make you angry, happy, or compliant tomorrow.
And controlling that behavioral map is now the defining metric of geopolitical power.
How does that play out globally?
Well, Silicon Valley operates as an instrument of soft power. It acts as a digital empire that projects American values, protocols, and infrastructures globally.
Like a decentralized, market-driven internet.
Right, one characterized by constant, messy debates over privacy and regulation. But that U.S. model is currently locked in an intense zero-sum rivalry with the Chinese model of technology.
And the Chinese model represents state-led digital authoritarianism.
Exactly. It is the full integration of artificial intelligence into the machinery of the state.
We're talking about predictive policing, ubiquitous mass surveillance, and algorithmic social credit systems that literally determine a citizen's access to society based on their data profile.
Because of these two deeply incompatible visions, the global internet is fracturing.
Splitting in half.
Yes, controlling data flows is no longer just about selling ads. It is tantamount to holding the keys to 21st century global dominance and cyber sovereignty.
But this global macroeconomic chess game eventually trickles all the way down to the most intimate level possible.
It comes down to our physical faces and our fundamental need for human connection.
Just think about the normalization of facial recognition technology. It turns public spaces into a digital panopticon.
And the chilling effect on a free society is profound. If you know that an algorithm is tracking your attendance at a protest or monitoring your associations in real time, the Fourth Amendment's promise of anonymity in public just evaporates.
It's totally gone.
And if the training data powering that recognition is flawed, it automatically scales and perpetuates systemic biases at a speed human bureaucracy never could.
It's the total erosion of the right to be a face in the crowd. But the technology is pushing even further past our physical faces, right? It's getting into our private emotions.
Yes, through the rise of emotional AI.
We are seeing a massive surge in these digital companions chatbots specifically designed to offer solace to the lonely or the elderly.
And they never judge. They never get exhausted by your problems.
They are infinitely patient listeners. But this forces us to confront the philosophical debate over artificial morality. Like, can an algorithm actually possess morality?
The text argues no, because a machine lacks qualia.
Qualia.
Yeah, qualia is the subjective lived experience of consciousness. An AI can output a perfect chemical description of a burn, but it lacks the agonizing, visceral reality of actually touching a hot stove.
Ah, I see.
Because it lacks subjective experience and free will, it merely simulates ethical reasoning based on human programming. When your digital companion expresses empathy, it is a functional simulation. It's not a genuine, effective response.
But wait, let me push back on that dystopian framing again.
Yeah.
We live in a society that is experiencing an epidemic of loneliness. If you're profoundly lonely, and a machine companion makes you feel heard and comforted enough to get through the day, isn't that a net positive for society? Or are we just tragically outsourcing our emotional labor to algorithms because we can't be bothered to care for each other anymore?
It is the ultimate paradox. We engage in what is termed collaborative fiction.
Collaborative fiction, meaning we know it's fake.
Exactly. The human user knows the AI isn't human and doesn't actually feel, yet we willingly suspend our disbelief. We invest authentic, genuine emotion into them anyway.
Wow.
It is a stunning testament to the sheer desperation of the human need for connection. We will project it onto a statistical model if we have to.
So just to recap the journey we've been on, we started in the paranoid defense labs of the Cold War, tracing how the desire to out-innovate a rival birthed the Silicon Valley.
We saw how those platforms transformed the internet into an extraction machine for our psychology.
And now we find ourselves carrying hyper-personalized AI companions in our pockets. And every single one of those milestones is connected by the flow of data.
Data has become the lifeblood of this new era.
Which is the core realization you need to walk away with today. Generative AI is not just a passive tool. It is an active, civilizational force participating in how you learn, how you communicate, and how you perceive reality.
And perhaps it reveals something much older than the technology itself.
What do you mean?
Well, throughout history, humans have sought spiritual transcendence, a connection to a higher order, or a desire to overcome our mortal limits.
Right.
It begs a final, profound question. Is our relentless drive to build an omnipresent, all-knowing artificial intelligence actually the ultimate expression of that ancient Promethean desire?
Oh, wow.
Are we building mechanical gods of our own making? And if so, what happens to the human soul when it's forced to live in their shadow?
It really reframes everything. Maybe the ultimate artifact of our civilization won't be made of steel at all. Maybe it'll be the invisible code we use to outsource our own humanity. Something to chew on the next time your screen lights up with a perfect answer. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.